Yeah, morning all. Yeah, thanks very much for joining the session. We are muting the cameras and the microphones. There's quite a bit that we've got to get through. We will give a chance for questions and answers, time permitted. There's quite a few items where I'm going to be asking questions. So if you can, in the chat, just reply. So I think while we're waiting for one or two other people, if I can ask everyone attending just to write what they would like to see out of AI from a reporting perspective. In other words, like what you do when you go into Google and you input in, you want to find out about a BMW M3, or you want to find out about Acumatica, from your system, what would you like to see? So in other words, show me my top 10 customers with the highest profit, and then show me the trending over the last 3 years. Are they buying the same or not buying the same, etc. We've got quite a mixed group today, so I'm expecting varied questions depending on what department you're sitting in, which is always good. So we might not get to all of them, but if I can ask that you just input those items that you would like to see in the chat group. So specifically around, what you would like to see from a reporting perspective. Okay, so I'm going to kick off. The session is being recorded. So if you want to share this, we will share it out with the people that have joined. However, what we will do at the end of the session is just a poll where I'm going to ask if you would like ERP365 to do a one-on-one session with your company. Like I say, there's quite a lot to unpack with AI and what Acumatica is doing. And, we're not going to solve everything today around AI. So, I'd recommend that, what you take out of today, you arrange with ERP365 just to have an in-depth discussion around your AI strategy and how Acumatica can fit into that. Okay, so we're just going to go through why you need to adopt an AI strategy, and this doesn't necessarily pertain to Acumatica. I think a majority of the companies that we support, they have multiple applications, multiple processes, different verticals, whether it's manufacturing or retail, and in many ways you're already incorporating an AI philosophy or some of the tools that AI is bringing into your day-to-day operations. So why adopt an AI strategy? Why does AI matter? In your business, in Acumatica, and why is it obviously important? And then how is Acumatica taking that journey? So what tools is Acumatica providing to the base? What is their future plans around AI? And I think you can see that through Hype, a lot of the ERP companies are focusing on AI. It's important to understand how Acumatica is taking that journey, why they've chosen some of the areas that they've gone into, and secondly is why have they taken a bit of time to get to some of the features that I'm going to be showing. Okay. So, I think there's been a lot of myth around AI. It's not new. This started just many years ago with machine learning. But I think because there is this massive hype around AI and social media and people getting more involved and businesses getting more involved, it's obviously something that companies need to adopt. But I think the important part is to say, that there's a baseline for this, and it's the expectation is how the business is going to shift with it, and not so much about chasing the hype. I think that's what's important. It's no point in just saying we want to implement AI. You need to understand the strategy around why you're implementing AI, and understanding how you can achieve your objectives by using the tools available. So, I think for a lot of companies, some of the companies, it's like the internet boom and the cloud boom where companies are talking about it, but maybe there's a bit of a misconnect between why you should be using it, how you're using it, and the strategy around it. So why it matters, the efficiency is incremental. It isn't incremental anymore, it's exponential. So in other words, the speed at which AI is moving it's not like companies can wait anymore. You can see it in every person is a doctor these days, through Google and that type of thing. But it's the same impact that's happening within the AI space. I'm seeing it in the services industry. People are questioning the ability of the software, and sometimes not through the consultants. They question it through tools like AI, like Google, Gemini, to understand the ability of the product. So that requires the service providers, it requires businesses to rapidly move with AI so that they're not caught behind and they're utilizing the tools available. So better decisions from your own data. I think critical here is that AI is not going to solve your problems if it's looking at the data and the source of the data is not correct, or the source of the data is malformed. So it's always important that the decisions are made on your own data, but the data that's been surfaced is critical. And that's one of the key areas that I'll go through when Acumatica, when we expose the AI on top of Acumatica. Customer expectations are rising, as I mentioned. Many customers are looking at service providers or even internally and saying, how can we improve? And it's maybe not let's reduce resources, but how can we make resources time more efficient? And I think that's the big thing that I've noticed since I've been using it is to manage your time a lot better. Redundant tasks that you keep or repetitive tasks, how can you make your life a lot more seamless, a lot more operational efficiency through the use of our tools? Competitors are doing it already. So if you're not doing it already, your competitor is. So you want to stay ahead of that curve. Reduces risk. I'll throw some tools how Acumatica is doing that, and unlocks new business models. So again, good AI strategy is it's not about using AI everywhere, more about using it where it's meaningful and changes the outcome. So just deploying AI is potentially not going to change your business model or change your efficiency. And that's why a structured approach to it and an understanding is critical to your AI strategy. So if we take those points and we look at what is Acumatica doing, and I'll go through each of these areas in terms of the AI automation that Acumatica has released. So efficiency isn't incremental, it's exponential. So I'll explain how Acumatica LLM, which is previously known as AI Studio, is trying to achieve it and solving it. Better decisions from your AI data. So Acumatica's AI assistant and the anomaly detection components of the AI. Customer expectations are rising. So again, Acumatica AI Assistant and Acumatica LLM prompts. Your competitors are already doing it or will be doing it soon. So Acumatica took a decision a long time ago to purchase an AI business because they saw that the trend was coming and that's where the industry was moving. So, from there, if you talk about a competitive advantage from an Acumatica point of view, in relation to your businesses, they already seen this previously and they've already adopted their strategy around AI. Reduces risk if done intentionally. So there again, anomaly detection is a good way to expose risk and to then act on it. And it unlocks new business models. So if we go through the features that Acumatica has released, and some of this is a little bit technical, but the way they've designed the tools and that, once you actually start to see what I'm going to go through, it'll just help you understand, some of the terms and why they've created these features. So AI Assistant, very similar if you think about like a chatbot or a Google Assistant where you type in information and you get in a prompt back relating to what you've typed in. This will become voice. At the moment, it's just text, if memory serves me, but they will definitely move to text-based. Anomaly detection. So what's important about anomaly detection is it's detecting anomaly within your Acumatica environment, within your data. So de-risking the business, so to speak. LLM prompts, formerly AI Studio. That's automation of what our deem is these mundane tasks or generating information in a meaningful way that is shared with customers or internally that doesn't require input from the end user. Okay, so just from a security point of view, so just to explain how Acumatica works is they've got In some of the areas, you tell Acumatica how much data you want to share. Even though you're sharing that, what Acumatica will do, and I'll show you an example, is it masks the data. So telephone numbers, people's names, people's email addresses, it will mask that. And what I mean by mask is it'll look and find the actual, let's say it's Joseph at macros.co.za. It'll bring back a similar email address, but it's completely fake. So what they're doing is they're protecting the end user and they're protecting your data. And I'll show ways that you can further do that as part of that. So it goes through their cloud service. It speaks to a lot of the LLM providers. So, the big ones that you may be using already, OpenAI, there's AWS and Azure. But all of these come at a cost. And I'll go through some of the, what you need to consider when you're implementing these features and the cost saving, but also what these can potentially cost and run away if you're not careful with your strategy. Okay. So AI assistant. So like I mentioned, this is what we generally call, as an example, a chatbot. So when would I use this? What is my use cases? So when you need immediate answers. So I think gone are the days where you want static reporting. I think what's important with this, and that's what I've learned over the time that I've been using this, is part of this allows you to generate a report. But as you start to use it, you realize that you're creating a static report, whereas what this feature allows you to do is to just repetitively ask it every month. It doesn't need to be the same thing, or every day, to generate the information. So now I don't actually need a static report, because my wants and my needs may change. And also it has drill down functionality. So, I might start off with a section and ask it about something that I'm looking at. And then based on that result, I might drill down or ask it something further. So ideally, it's not really to design dashboards and static dashboards. It's a working tool that you would use in your operational to avoid you having to design static reports, to put thresholds in your reports, because those are kind of reactive. So this is very much a proactive approach to dashboards and information. So when you need to compare data, so again, you can ask it, like I mentioned earlier, compare my sales of customer X, Y, and Z over the past 3 years to show me trending. Is that customer buying less or buying more? When you need data visualization, so some people are visual. Here I've got numbers on the right-hand side, but I can immediately see there's a trend here. If, as an example, this was the same customer and they were buying different products, I could see the trend of the top products that he's buying. When building dashboards and widgets, so it gives you the ability to move a dashboard into standard Acumatica, so you can refresh it. And when you need to control data access. So I think what's also critical with some of these tools, and especially when you're exposing it outside of your environment, is you don't want certain people to see certain information. So what's nice is when I'm questioning Acumatica, no matter if I'm a manager or if I'm an operational resource or if I'm an executive, it's still only going to show me the information I have access to, which is, I think, key, because you don't want to now go and ask, show me X, Y, and Z, and the wrong person is seeing the data. So again, it's because it's in Acumatica and it's going through your data, going through your roles and security, I'm only going to be able to see and get feedback on what I have access to. Okay, so I'm just going to go into it quickly. I'll share my screen now. I'm just going to jump between sharing, so apologies, but okay. Okay, let me know, Lindy, if you can just let me know if you can see the screen now for Acumatica. Yeah. Okay, so just a few things. So I'm just going to show quickly when for those of you that don't know, the enable feature. So with Acumatica, to enable features, you run something called enable disable features, and then it allows you to choose what's available based on your license. With AI, they have changed the licensing model. So depending on what tier you're in, you may have to request Acumatica for a new license. It's also important to note that any customer on Essentials Edition, which is the lowest tier of Acumatica in terms of the edition that you can go on, doesn't have exposure to this. So if you are going to, and we'll share this with the clients, that show interest, even if you don't show interest, we'll share it with you to let you know that what tier you're in. These are the limitations you might have if you're looking at going on the AI journey. So this version is 2026 R1. So if you're looking at doing going to the AI, there is certain things that they released in 2025 R2, but ultimately they've wrapped it completely into 2026 R1. And that's what I'm just going to show now is where we would enable these. So if we scroll down and we look for something called AI automation, or platform, as we say, is my AI Studio, anomaly detection, and my AI automation. Okay, so once I've enabled these, I get access to the anomaly detection, which I mentioned previously, my AI automation, which is my LLM prompts, and I'll explain that. And then Acumatica often releases experimental features. And some of you may not be aware of this, but depending on your license and your, if you've been exposed to what they call the focus groups and the early adopters, you can get access to features that Acumatica may be releasing. Now, what is important with some of these features is if you hover over them in certain instances, there'll be a little yellow exclamation mark. And it'll actually warn you to say it's an experimental feature. In other words, there is a chance that, they've got to push this out into the market. If they get traction, then they'll release it as a feature. So be careful. Sometimes if you are enabling some of these features, there may be a chance that it doesn't move in. But I can tell you the ones that definitely will is the AI assistant, which I'm going to show you now, and Insight Excel. If there's time, I might show this. This is a tool that's very similar to Velexo that Acumatica is going to be releasing. Okay, so I've enabled now my automation, my AI automation. Once I do that, you'll see this little AI assistant comes here. So very similar to, if you click in on a chatbot, you get, then I can type in here and I can ask the chatbot anything. It's given me a few recommendations and these change over time. So what it obviously does is it starts to look at your behavior. What are you asking about? And it starts to recommend things besides you just asking it based on your behavior and what you've been asking for it. I don't know if there was anything that came in the chat. Doesn't look like it. So I'm just going to run through my sort of what I call my standard list of items. Just going to move that there. Okay, so the whole purpose of the AI assistant is, and there is one key fundamental item here that I'm going to go through, which is how it surfaces data. Okay, so the AI assistant will look at Acumatica, but it's restricted to the generic inquiries. Okay, those of you that don't know what a generic inquiry is, it's almost like a data set of information that is either standard in Acumatica or that a partner's created or you yourself have created. And it's about information in a certain area. So as an example, sales profitability analysis, I can expose that GI. And how we would do that is if we go to our generic inquiries, move that over. If I wanted to, and I'm just going to use anyone as an example, but let's say it was my bill of material operations. On my, so system's a bit slow. On my interface options, you can see I've got exposed to AI assistant. The minute I click that, it means that it's going to start to surface in my AI, call it how it's scanning the data and mining the data. Then it knows that it'll go and look there. And if you think about why they're doing this is because some information may not be relevant. So you don't want the AI assistant, especially if there's cost to certain of these things, scanning reams and reams of data to give you information. So again, your strategy must be around if it's, your department, what do specific departments want to see, then I'm going to expose those GRs. One thing that I've been testing as well is, and I'll give feedback on this, is it's fine if it's a standard Acumatica GR because generally 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, that data is going to be sound. if you've had a consultant in, or if you've had, as yourself as a customer, have modified a GR and by mistake done incorrect joins, and I get duplicate data, does the AI interpret that? I did one test and it did, because what it allowed is it said there's a discrepancy between my sales profitability and another GR that I was doing. Okay, so it's also starting to show you where you've potentially got flags in your data. So just be cautious of that. As I mentioned, I'm testing it, so it may not always surface. But from what I've seen is that it's exposing that you have a potential data risk because you've duplicated data. Okay. So it's always looking at the source of the truth. Okay, so once we've enabled that, there's now a feature called AI data processing. Let me get it. AI data assistant processing. Now, what you'll see in here is every single generic inquiry that I've ticked, I can say whether I want the AI to go and look at it. So for purpose of this demonstration, I'm not going to update it, but I would click on this initially and then process all. You can clear the cloud and schedule this. So what it does is it just every now and then does a clear out of the data. So primary purpose of this is as well as resurfacing data. So if somebody's just asked for a very recent question, it can go and look at that, go and realize what it did to get that data, and it just speeds up the process. Okay, so in this case, let's ask it, maybe if you're in the services industry or if you're using the case system, give me the top 10 cases that are, so let me minimize the screen. Assistant. Okay, I think I just cut it off there. Let me just drag that again. Okay, so you'll see now it says answering. So what it's doing now is it's answering my question, but you'll see every now and then it'll go into the generic inquiries, and it'll actually go and surface that information. I did pick up once or twice where, and I'm hoping it's not going to do it today, of course it will, but where it seems to just carry on with this answering and it doesn't resurface the data. Okay, but it seems like it's fine. So you can see it's now gone into my generic inquiry or multiple generic inquiries, and it's gone and it's shown me all my data. What I have noticed as well, I viewed this in Las Vegas probably about 2.5 years ago. They demonstrated this, and it was a bit clunky. And what I mean by that, and obviously it was they were testing it at that phase, is there were certain things that when we asked it, we noticed certain things. So as an example, Acumatica, it's vendors, not suppliers. It could be stock items versus SKUs. So a few things there. I've noticed the terminology. It's call it industrial. So in other words, you can now say SKU instead of stock item, or vendor versus supplier, and it understands that. So that's, I think, a big change is that you no longer have to be very specific in terms of the terminology used in Acumatica. It knows based on worldwide terminology that an SKU is a stock item. Okay, and that's also key because you don't want to have to now go and learn, well, what is the correct terminology. It'll understand that. Other piece it gives you is it gives you more insight. So it's now not just a static report. It's gone in, it's looked at the data, and it's providing me with valuable information around what it sees. Again, it's going to base it on the data. I've seen one, we tested this internally as an example where we wanted to review our SLAs. And what it came back to me is we've got a description just when we cancel an SLA called don't use. And when it came back with the data, it said, you may want to check some of these SLAs because it might be misleading because it now says don't use. Okay, and that wasn't something that we obviously asked it. So I think the power of the AI assistant is, easy to use. The terminology you don't need to necessarily worry about, and it can deep dive. So although now it's given me the information, if I wanted to go and click on this case, it's already drilled down into that information. So I don't have to jump from screen to screen and various areas. If this was maybe in a Power BI dashboard or on a Excel or any other tool you're using, does it have the capability to drill down? Because that's always important. I don't want to jump between areas. The other piece that I wanted to add to this is that because Acumatica can retrieve data from other systems, so you might have 3 or 4 systems that you're using, you do have the ability to import that data into Acumatica just through a custom table. You could then surface that custom table into a generic inquiry, expose the generic inquiry here, and the Acumatica AI assistant will then start to obviously surface that information as well. So it's also key when you're starting to build, try not to, it's going to still speak to the LLM service, and I'll explain that just now. So it can still get data from the world, but often, you want to keep it isolated into a certain area so that I don't need to pull data from everywhere. If you do, that's fine, but just understand that there's the potential for not being able to drill down. Okay, so let's maybe ask it a bit of a more challenging question. So here I'm going to say I've got my top 10 inventory items with stock, and it's got the highest cost, and it hasn't been sold in the last year. Now, obviously, it's a very broad statement, but I'm just challenging the system to see, what does the AI system pick up, and what isn't going to give back. And it does take a bit more time. Obviously, the more advanced the question, the more areas and the more generic inquiries it's got to sift through, because it needs to go through a number of GRs. But if you think about how long this would have taken an individual to go through, try and pull this report or try and go to this dashboard, it's doing it in a couple of minutes. You can go and make coffee, you can go and do other things or work on other things, come back and your information will be there. Okay, so it's running through again. You can see it's going through various items. It's also going through that some of Acumatica's cloud to mask the data if need be. But again, I think what's important with Acumatica's AI strategy, and that's what they very much push in when we have discussions with them, is that they realize that ERP is sensitive data. You don't want to share information. It could be your IP around your manufacturing. It could be your IP around your costs. Not your IP, but your cost information. You don't want to source that. So, that's what's always key when you're thinking about this. What information am I sharing? And if I am sharing it, am I masking it? So that's important. And that's more for when we go through LLM. So it's taken a bit of a while. It's crunching numbers going through. So let's see what it comes out with. Okay. Also, what it'll do is you can see over here, if it looks at the sources, I can do cases, and that's coming from the case system or the case GRs. What these little thumbs up, thumbs down is because this is speaking to Acumatica in the background. It's also going through some of their cloud service from a security point of view as well. You can then give it a thumbs up or thumbs down, and that shows them that the information that you've retrieved was actually great, or not so great. So it's their way of working on and improving the system continuously. So if we look at this, it's come up with a whole lot of dog food with the information. And what it's shown me, and I think this is what's key to this, is it can't verify on-hand quantities. Reason why is because the data sources that I've given it doesn't have any confirmation around the actual stock in the warehouse. So what it already is showing me is if I want to get that information, I need to have a GR or enable a GR that shows me my valuation on my current inventory and my balances on my current inventory. Okay, and then it can show you, your graphs. It's got the drill down. So again, took a bit of time. But again, because it's having to, if you look at what it's doing, it's starting to go through GRs and realizing there's gaps. So if it didn't have those gaps, it would have surfaced the information a lot quicker. Okay, I'm going to try one more just for the sake of time, or if there's anybody that wants to put a note in the chat or a question in the chat that they'd like to ask. Just with relation to this company, it's the demo company, so it's got manufacturing, distribution, field services. I don't think we've enabled everything, but so it's surfacing through a lot of information, a lot of features and data that, because it's the demo data that we use. Okay, if I wanted to clear all of this, or I could, ask it further information. So what's also nice is it starts to suggest based on your information. So here we go, which customers have purchased pet food products. Okay, so again, I haven't asked it anything, but it's starting to analyze my behavior and my requirements, and it's deep diving further, and it's giving me suggestions around that. And again, if I had to click on here and let it run through the process, I can drill down further, and that's why, when you're looking at these reports, it wouldn't make sense necessarily to have this as an active chart. Yes, maybe it would, but if I want to ask more information, it's better to do it this way. And I can do it every month. I can do it daily, my operational check-ins, and it just helps with that ease of use to get to data. I don't have to design a dashboard in theory. I can just do it on the fly and ask it questions on the fly. Okay, let's maybe do, just want to see if I've, okay, so one of the other ones, and this is probably the last one, I'm going to just ask it. Just take that out. Okay, so maybe you want to see your branch, you've got multiple branches, which branch is underperforming for the past 6 months. Yes, you can do this on a static dashboard, but like I said, maybe I want to see 7 months, maybe I want to see a year. I don't want to have to keep going through all of that rigmarole of filtering and doing it. I just want to ask it, and let's see what it comes out with. Okay, so going through again, all of the GR's data requested. Keep in mind, like I said in the beginning, I've exposed all of the generic inquiries that I've exposed through published. So it's going through a lot of data to get this. But again, the amount of data and the quality that it's returning, the compute power and how quickly it's doing it is impressive. And like I mentioned, you could carry on working, doing other, other tasks whilst you're waiting for this data. Okay, so there's my 6-month projection, not projection, my reality. It's telling me what it's done. It's telling me which branches, what's the underperforming. And then it gives me some important information about, basically the data that it's reviewing. And it gives me information around, why there's potentially some issues. So is it seasonal factors for certain branches? Then again, like I said, showing me where I've pulled this data from. So it's the sales profitability, and how it's grouped. It is by branch, by net sales. And like I said, I'll just give it a thanks, and then you can carry on with the next question. So again, maybe now that I know which is the branch, I want to then go and ask a question around, well, what is Services West? Why is that branch? What are they selling? Is there been customer churn potentially on some of the, or is the items not doing well? And again, it's that drill down of information to give you meaningful insight into what's going on in the company. Okay, I'm going to close the the AI assistant for now. To me, it's a great feature. It's definitely improving continuously. I'd highly recommend that one specifically as well. Besides all of them, like I said, it is a module feature that will be coming out. So, what Acumatica does allow is especially for something like this, is a test license if it's not available yet, and then you can enable it, start surfacing it already on your data. Okay, so if we go back to our AI assistant, just want to share my screen. Okay, so if you think about your strategy and each of your departments' requirements around AI assistant, that's what's key. What surface information do I want? You've got to be careful with who you obviously expose this to. You don't want every 5 seconds somebody answering things and playing with it. It must be meaningful. But you can see from what I did there is you know, when you need immediate answers. So I don't want to have to stream through reports or that. You know, I'm an executive, I'm a manager, or I'm ops. I want to look at a purchase order, or I want to see, you know, why the specific purchase order, give me details around why we spending more on purchasing, anything like that, get immediate answers. I can compare it to data. So compare this year to last year, compare this month to last month, compare this supplier to that supplier. I did do one, and I'll share it a bit later, is so I said, show me the top suppliers where we're purchasing the most from, but then also show me the on-time delivery. So my OTD, show me that stat, because if they're always supplying late, maybe that's a way to negotiate, or that has a big impact upstream on my service delivery. I need to go and have a chat with that, you know, with that supplier. And although it didn't give me the exact data, there was reasons why, is because we didn't have KPIs set against suppliers, or there was certain information, but it explained how you should be doing it and what you can potentially do in Acumatica to get that information. Okay, so if we move away then from AI assistant, we've got anomaly detection. So anomaly detection's been out for a while. You may have heard this. They started it with GL discrepancy. So in other words, people post in journals or items hit in the journal or the GL, and it just highlights. So maybe I've got a contract as an expense account, or there's a office, you know, some stationery, or whatever the case may be, and that all of a sudden sparks. It then goes and runs this. This one does compute into Acumatica because of the processing it needs. So what this will do, it's insights into anomalies of your data. So you would put this on again on a specific GR. Like you saw what I did earlier, the assistant was at the bottom. The one directly above that was anomaly detection. You just enable that. And then what it'll do, and I'm going to go through that now, is it'll go and pull that data into Acumatica, compute, calculate, come back and say, these are the items you need to de-risk or go and view. Okay, so where would I use this? Like I mentioned earlier, sales and margin analysis. Nice way to see, you know, where the guys are maybe, it was the same customer, same items, and then all of a sudden there's a huge decrease or increase in margin. Purchase price variances is another one. Production labor variances, you know, guys overstating labor, whatever the case may be, financial discrepancies, and inventory irregularities. So I'm going to take you through that now, and apologies again for, see if I can maybe just minimize this one, might be easier. Okay, so if we go to our anomaly detection, so as I mentioned, if there was certain generic inquiries or certain areas of Acumatica you wanted to the anomaly detection to run through, you would start with obviously understanding which generic inquiry. That's obviously important. And then over here, I want to detect anomalies. Okay, there's two parts to this. The expose AI system, I just need to click on it. When I click on detect anomalies, what you'll see here is I get another area that's now been exposed. And it's going to ask me, what field do I want to analyze? Okay, so in this case, I want to say quantity to produce, or maybe scrap quantity. I want to look at my variance, my variance on my scrap. So I click on there. My time frame is generally always going to be date. So it's going to look at this. Maybe it'll be start date or end date. Let's say it was end date. And then my grouping structure. So maybe I want to group it by production order, or maybe I want to group it by department or work sense, or whatever the case may be, to see how it analyzes that. Okay, so once you've set that up, you can go to detect anomalies. So that's what I'm going to go to now. And then what you'll see, I've obviously run these for the sake of time. It depends on how big the data set is. So what it'll do is you can set up. So in this case, I've done one for costs in AP. I've done one for my sales margins. And you've got various options to run this. So in other words, how often do we want to run this? Do we want to run it on demand? So I only run it when I want to. Do I want to do it daily? Do I want to do it monthly? And then the system will schedule and do that, that anomaly detection. What it does over here is once you've decided on your data set, you'll see I've already sent it. So it's already analyzed it. But you'll get next steps, and you can again it knows in when to schedule this. It then takes that data, it's encrypted, it's secure, and it's masked. In other words, if there's any sensitive data around people, names, all of that, it masks it, okay, so that you can't see it. Does the calculation and then comes back, and once it's completed, I now have access to that. So if we had a look at, I'm going to show the AP document one. Okay, so if we view this inquiry, okay, you automatically see that there's a red line, or it's highlighted a red item, and it's showing me that the anomaly is significant. Okay, so it's telling me that it's gone through, it's gone through the process, and it's, in this case, it could be, when I had a look at this earlier, it was because it's a non-stocked item with a huge value. Now, it could be that it's a normal stock item and all of a sudden my costing's changed, or I've been buying from a specific supplier and the cost has all of a sudden changed versus the other supplier. So it does a whole lot of compute in the background to give you this. What it'll do as well is it, so on the GL side, it has the potential to flag a journal. So it'll actually stop the transaction and then you have to approve it. For this one, what it'll do is it'll allow you to review it. So, as the purchasing department or even the financial manager or CFO, you could then come in here, review it, and then just say that you've reviewed it. So you're happy with it, you know why it's occurred. The other alternative is and again, for me, everything's become an exception-based and that proactiveness. You don't want to go through and be reactive. You just want to see what you need to focus on, resolve that issue, and move on to the next. So I don't really care if it's normal, because if it's normal, it's not an anomaly. So what you may want to do is a dashboard based on this. So I've just done a quick one where just show me the items I need to focus on. So these are all the normal. These are the 12 or however many items it is. And it could be a lot initially because, it's picking up a number of detections. These are medium. And then I'd go and review these and make sure that I'm de-risking the business or de-risking, anything going forward. So anomaly detection, you can do it, like I said, on various items. There is a cost to this in Acumatica, so depending on the volume. The reason why is if you think about it, to do AR compute is very expensive, so it is a cost to them, and obviously depending on the volume that you're pushing through, there is going to be an impact. So again, on this one, I'd be very specific in the areas, and it's generally your risk areas. So your purchasing, sales, and you can do it on pre-purchase. So maybe I don't want to do it because at this stage it's too late. I've paid for the goods. Or I've been invoiced for the goods. Maybe what I want to do is it on the purchase approval or purchase requisition. So before it gets to this AP document stage, I've already reviewed, approved, and we're good to go. And I know that I've de-risked that purchasing process. Okay, so if we go back to, let's see if I can just do this rather. So if we go back to anomaly detection, again, the use cases, so if we look at it, I showed you the purchasing one. Sales margin one is exactly the same. They're all the same. It'll highlight, and then it'll show me where I need to focus on. Okay, so that covers anomaly detection. I think for me, this is all about risk and exposure. So it's exposing areas of the business where you have risk, where there's risk maybe, or where there's some anomalies already being detected. So nice thing is you could go and run it on historical. Yes, you can't solve that issue because it's already happened, but maybe you can solve it from happening again. Okay, LLM prompts. I don't know why they call it LLM. It's large language model, if you're technical, but effectively what this is it's allowing those mundane tasks that we do for automation. In other words, for Acumatica to handle it. So when would we use this? Automatic content generation, and that's what I'm going to go through now. Summarization and insight. So, you may have very strong people in the business, but maybe their communication is not the greatest. They don't communicate well. So, and in this case over here, I've got an example of a case where what you can do is allow Acumatica based on the case contents, the activities, everything that's gone on that case to build a closure note or to give me a summary. So maybe I'm the support manager. I want to go and look at my case statistics or cases where a customer is unsatisfied. And again, it's not because of me setting a threshold. It's going through the case and it's maybe picked up, oh, yesterday, Joe Soap emailed and said how unsatisfied he was with the service or complained or said that there's a material impact to the business. It'll surface it and it'll give you that information. So good for summarization and insights, data enrichment and normalization. So what you can also do is I think in a lot of areas, people are different. So I might submit communication to a customer in one way, another consultant might submit it in another way. And again, this is not necessarily around case management, and I'll show you a bit later around stock descriptions, but it could even be around your leads and opportunities. Maybe you've got a structured format that when you get in a lead or an opportunity and you want to reply to that opportunity, this is the structure that I'm expecting it to go into, and this is the way I'm going to handle that so that the communication is standardized and it's meaningful in terms of what the business expectation is. Streamlining workflows. This, I think, is going to take a bit of time, but this is effectively maybe where you can do certain things. I almost look at it similar to like classes, where if I click on a class, it updates certain information. This is going to be very similar. So it's going to then allow us to capture something and then based on that, go and update something or add information. And I'll show you how that works. And then obviously anomaly detection. So LLM, large language model, what this effectively is there's multiple service providers that do this now, like there's OpenAI, ChatGPT, and all of these guys, there's different costs to it, different models that they have. This is the piece of Acumatica where you do need to connect to an external party outside of Acumatica. Okay, and the reason why is because this is going to surface information from the world sometimes. So in other words, and that's what I'll go through now, is that if I've got stock and I want to see a description of that stock, so maybe we're buying a new stock item from a supplier that we've obviously bought from before, I want to add a stock code, but I want to then create a description based on their specifications, but in my format. Okay, so that's where this is moving towards, and I think these are the ones where eventually it's going to start to do the automation side of what people are doing. Okay, so I'm going to run through that now. Just get back here. Okay, so if we go into our favorites, you'll see that with Acumatica, you get LLM prompts and LLM connections. Okay, I'm just going to go through the connections, and I don't want to get to the technicalities of this, but just to explain, I'm using OpenAI. It is the one that Acumatica recommends based on costing and what they've done. So what this would be is I've got to register with an LLM, and in this case, like I said, I've done it with OpenAI. Then based on that, you can buy tiers, you can buy tokens, they call it, it could be credits, it depends on which one it is. But for every call, they charge you so much tokens or credits, okay? So as an example, I purchased $5. I've done numerous testing, and I think I've spent 1 cent so far out of that $5. So what it does do is it shows you the amount of spend that you're doing, and I'll show that just now, which is always key. So my caution on this one is always, with these LLM providers, check the tiers, because as you use the LLM services, the tier jumps up. So Claude might be great, for the basic things that you're requesting now, but as that volume grows, it might become a lot more expensive. Okay, so keep in mind that. Also cap your spend. Don't allow that it automatically just updates your tokens. Okay, and I'll show you just now how OpenAI from my account, what it looks like and how it costs everything. Okay, so first of all, we need a connection to the LLM service provider. I'm just going to test this just to wake it up. So what this is doing is just testing that my credentials to work to use the API layer of OpenAI is available, and there it's come back successful. Okay, so once I've done that and I've set up my connector, I can then go to my LLM prompts. LLM prompts, if you think about it, it's workflows and generating information from within Acumatica or pulling that information externally and saving it to Acumatica. So the first one I'm going to go through is just a stock item description. Okay, so little bit technical, but I did I set up one of these to if I'm adding a new customer as an example, and I've got my onboarding form, but I want to just validate some data. I want to get more information. I set this up. It took maybe 2 minutes, and I'm not a developer, and I could run this and get information back. So it takes maybe a little bit of time just to understand what it does. But effectively, there's 3 components to it. There's a context instruction. So I've said, for this one, we are the purchasing department, whatever the case may be, and I'm looking to update the product information so that, I don't need to manually do this. So what is the context of the instructions? Then instructions with data input. So obviously, it needs to understand what am I looking at. So which item code, which description, and you can do attributes as well. So if you've maybe got attributes around a specific item industry, or there's maybe categories of the item and you don't want it to do all of it, it can surface that information. And then give me the output. So yes, this looks very long-winded, but once you start to break it down, and I'll show you quite a nice and how easy it actually is. So I'm going to take out, and all that I'm doing is I'm hashing, again, no code, and I'm going to take out my customer quotes. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm effectively, this is the output format. You don't need to worry about that. You just need to generate the example in some of these so it can show you what it would do. But in this case, it's telling me that I am going to use the LLM service, my OpenAI service. And here's my screen. So what screen am I expecting to update? So in this case, it's my stock items. And that's how it knows where it needs to populate this information. For now, with the prompt testing, I'm just using it as an example, and I'll show you where you would eventually run this within Acumatica if you were happy with how it was working. So I'm going to do Sony here. Okay, and I've got this TV. Okay, so all that I've done is, as I've said, I've got this TV. It's provided a bit of information. Now I wanted to go and surface that information, go and pull from various sources from OpenAI, accumulate that and give me a description. So it is using tokens. So remember, because I'm connecting to OpenAI, there is a cost to this. It's very lightweight. But as you're using this feature more and more and volumes are increasing, you do need to watch your costs. Okay, so it's come back. Again, I've done nothing in terms of this. I forgot to save it, so it actually added what I was going to say earlier. But let's say initially, when I went through this, as an example, Acumatica's got this as a default one that you can use. So what I did is I said, well, let me test the imagination and see what it's capable of. And I said, include competitor comparison. Okay, so don't just give me what this is about. Tell me why I would want to buy this over any of my competitor products. Then I said, well, maybe do I want a customer quote? So now, whether I haven't validated this, I don't know if it's just generating a quote like you see on some of these ads on toothpaste and all of these and doctors, where it's not a real scenario. It's a made-up scenario, but it could very well be, and you can tell it to surface certain things. So what I've said there is besides just giving me the product information, give me customer reviews. Okay, and it's gone and it's created that for me. So now, when I'm updating my descriptions, and you can schedule this to do this, provide that. Again, you do want to approve this. So the one thing always with AI initially as well is always validate, because again, especially when I'm going to an LLM service, it's pulling data from a lot of areas. Okay, then I just asked it for a funny story. Again, the contact us, it's using, you can see here, like I mentioned earlier, what it does do is it masks any data that is potentially going to go against Poppy and all of these other acts. Okay, and it's masked that telephone number is probably fictitious as well. Okay, and then what it's done at the bottom here is I've just said, show me how this has been generated. And what it's done there is it's just said it's done it through LLM service. Okay, so if I wanted to now, so let's say I like this, I've gone through the testing, it seems like a great feature for the guys. I would make this active. And then if I go to my inventory stock items, can find it. Okay, so let's say I wanted to do, well, you can choose any of these. So let's say it was that one. Okay, and I'm going to go to the description because this is obviously what updates it. So I'm going to take this out. Okay, so let's save it. If I wanted to generate the description, because I've activated it now, I can generate the description. It'll then go onto my LLM provider, surface that information, bring it back based on my structured format of how I've done it. And again, I think that's what's nice here is you can structure the format. You can do it for certain types of classes as well. So maybe on this specific class, I want this specific format, and then it'll allow you to do that. So it's gone out to the LLM and then given me a whole lot of information around this. Again, that get in touch. There's my funny story that I've added, and then you could do it. If you wanted to change this again, so if I went back to, just go back to my favorites, and you can see that it's asking me if I want to save it. So it's not just automatically saving it, it's asking the user to validate if the information is, so you do have to be cautious with this, but it took me 3-4 seconds to generate that, whereas I'd have to type this out, find all the information, and especially if it's a known product, you've just got to be careful because it's sourcing from so much vendors. Potentially there might be a mismatch in terms of what you may want to say as part of that description. Okay, so if I go back to my descriptions, okay, so here what I could do is, like I mentioned earlier, is if I didn't want the funny story, I could hash that, save it. Just going to generate my example. And then run my test again, and it would remove that from the item. Okay, so very good feature. I think this is still gonna be take a while for people to get used to. There's going to be a lot of testing with this. I'll show you in a live case where, as an example, like I mentioned earlier, let's say it was support, and it doesn't necessarily have to be support. So you've got to open your imagination to this, where you can potentially use it in Acumatica. Maybe you want to use it on production. Maybe you want to do it on, like I said, sales opportunities. So let's say I've got a case and I want to review it. These side panels, which if you haven't seen before, it's a way to give information about jumping or drilling down. So if I want to click on any of these, so let's maybe check my shipping charges. Okay, this one's closed. It's going to go through. It's now surfacing through all the activities, all of the information related to that case. And there you can see that's my summary. Again, it's not pertaining, it's not just fluff. It's gone through all of the activities, all of the notes, and it's now generated that. If I wanted to as well, so let's say on this one as an example, and this was my example for the session. So, somebody's complained about the AI presentation. How do I resolve that? So if I wanted to generate closure notes, so I've done an activity, and I've just mentioned that, while I was doing the presentation, the guy's camera was off and he seemed to be doing everything but listening to the presentation. So I want to generate the closure notes to help me. I think I've done enough to close off this case. It's going to use again that LLM, push through, and then it's going to generate my closure notes. So here, the case was reviewed. It was noted that the customer's camera off was during the presentation. Now again, it's got all of this information. It's structured, and which helps because, especially in areas of communication back to clients, you want it to be standardized. You want the impact to be the same, and that customer service improvement. So how do I make sure that the content is generated in a way that also provides next steps, as an example, because you could also do this with a reply back to a customer. What's also nice is maybe you can surface Acumatica's help. Like I'm going to use our one as an example. So let's say I've got a case that comes in. For you guys, it could be, maybe you want to surface technical specs or help on some of your products. I could surface any help file that or help site that any of my suppliers have. I could run this information through there. And then when it comes back, it's obviously going to give me suggestions. And I think that's the power of it. It's that quick access to data, quick access to information so that I can start to resolve issues. We're starting to incorporate this as a business a lot. It is fairly recent, but we're going to start, you've got to eat your own dog food, so to speak. We use Acumatica, so we're starting to utilize a lot of these features in our own business and our own practice. So AI, LLM prompts, maybe a little bit more technical, but again, as I mentioned, I'm not a developer. It took me about 2 minutes. Once you get your head around it, you can do certain things. The other one that I did it for, as an example, so let's just go to my customers or even vendors. Just let me get to my customer. Let's rather do customers. Now, depending obviously if this company actually physically exists, or it might just give me some dummy data. But let's say I was a data capturer, or I needed certain information, I could run it through the LLM prompt and just get the information. And once I was happy with it, surface it. So as an example, it's going to go and look at certain things. So I've just said retrieve customer information. It's going through my LLM. Now, the reason why this one is not going to be accurate potentially is because of that masked data. Acumatica's built-in safety guards around that, so you'd have to get workarounds that. But what it'll do is it'll go and look at the address. It'll go in, because that's what I've told it to do, go and look at the telephone number, and then go and populate this customer. So I think there's going to be huge value further on down the line with regards to LLM and LLM prompts, but definitely a working model. I'd start to look at the description ones, start to look at the items where you're constantly having to update data, your spec docs. If you are using the case systems in Acumatica, utilize it to summarize your cases and to close off your cases. And then obviously the AI assistant and anomaly detection, start to use those ones. So if we go back, just going to go back to our slide. So items to note here. So after everything I've gone through now, and there's a lot to this, as you can see. I would recommend sessions with us to start on the journey of your AI. You've obviously already done it on maybe other applications, or you haven't started it, but let's just see how we bolt those into Acumatica so that you're not paying additional costs, for other services where Acumatica is already going down that road. So like I mentioned, it's only available on Select, Prime, or Enterprise. The other one is Essentials. So any customer on Essentials won't have access to this. Legacy customers. So if you were a customer that signed up with Acumatica quite a while ago, you would have been on like the small business edition. Can't remember the other one's medium. And what that means is that there's no cost to it, but you have to sign a new agreement with Acumatica because of their license instruction. The way it works is it can only be issued as part of if you're in a Select tier, Prime, or Enterprise. Okay, so a lot of the new customers, they would already be in one of these tiers, and therefore they could just request it and get pricing and so on. There are tiered costs for anomaly detection and a base cost for the AI Studio. So again, that base cost, and if I show, I just want to go back into here. How's that? Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, I've registered with the platform. and you can see then I've used 5 cents. But what it'll do is it'll show you, the tokens used, where the request from, but Acumatica itself also has the screen. So it has the ability to show you for my anomaly detections or for potentially my LLM detections, prompts, how much of my tokens have used. So you can add credits. Like I said, I've capped this one, so it'll never go over the $5. But from what I've seen is you can do quite a lot with, and not a lot of money, but again, focused strategy, focused AI implementation. Where do where do you see this improving your business and your efficiency? And over time, you'd obviously build on this. Okay, so oops, let me go back. So Acumatica remains open AI, and I'll send this to customers that are interested, also to customers that are not, anyone that attended the session, just why they recommend in open AI and how you can set that up. And then what I would like to do, I knew this session was going to be quite a lot to go through. So what we want to do is in one of our next sessions, is do a 2026 one feature session. So I'm just going to skim through some of the new features that they're looking at. So they've released the new reimagined self-service portal. So the very much the look and the feel. Unfortunately, they've released the payment ability in the States. It's not in South Africa yet, but there's a lot of ISVs that could potentially plug in that. But they've really, I've tested it. Its look and the feel, it's a lot better. The only challenge with it at the moment is if you've done any customization, you cannot do it yet on the self-service portal. They don't allow it. It is going to change, but for now, they're obviously just getting it. You can run both portals, so you can set up a customer-facing portal for testing and keep your existing one if you want to start, testing the self-service portal. Acumatica UI, that's came out already in 2025 R2, but they've just improved on the new UI. So UI, user interface, you have the classic and legacy, and you've now got the new one, and that allows you to obviously change between those. And the big thing around here is it gives you the ability to manage your screens a lot better. So if a silly example, if we had to put a user-defined field, an attribute on one of your screens, 9 times out of 10, you'd have to get us to do a customization, and we'd drop that onto the screen for you. With the new UI, they've allowed that you can actually do that yourself now as a customer, and I would recommend starting to get your head around that. And starting to utilize that feature a lot more. Organize documents easily with tag-based file management. So similar to if you've used Shopify, your tag-based documents. I'm not going to go through the detail now. Transform your financial reports in dynamic analytical report manager to Excel integration. So this one here, and I can see where they're going with it. I have no doubt that they will eventually move this into other areas of Acumatica. But what they've allowed in this version specifically, it is a test feature. So remember those ones at the bottom, I said it's not a module yet. So there may be a cost to this. But what it can do at the moment is any of your ARM reports. So let's say I've got my profit and loss or my balance sheet. I can drop that like you would normally do in Excel, but I've got an icon there that now says next to it, when I export it, it says Excel connected, and you can then export that. You do have to have the Acumatica Outlook login. In other words, when you log into Acumatica, if you run in Office 365, we hook into that and we allow you to connect to that into Acumatica. So in other words, you don't use your username and password. And I would start to recommend customers start using things like SSO, Active Directory logins, if you have the ability. But what this does is it uses that feature, that login. And then when I drop it into Excel, I can then log into Excel like what we do with Valexa. And I can go and refresh that report from within Excel. So no longer do I have to keep it in Acumatica only. Secondly is I can use then formulas. So that was always the challenge, with the ARM reports and the moving around my GL codes and so on and so forth. I now have the flexibility in Acumatica, in Excel, using very similar methodology or process that Valexo is using to update the data. And again, because I'm logging in as myself, I will only see the data that I have exposure to and only be able to update the data that I have exposure to. So very nice feature. I'll do a session around this. I have been asking Acumatica, what's sort of the roadmap, because, you've got Valexo and now you've got this, how are we navigating those waters, and what does that roadmap look like? So I will give feedback on that. Enhance your foreign currency payments experience. I'm going to go through that now. Unify customer interactions with the activity stream, change pick locations on the fly, enable approvers for adjustments. And these are just a few of the items where, where we see in some benefit, but there's a number of issues. I tried to email most of the customers, and we'll do this as part of ER365, is starting to send you the release notes, the feature updates. And what I like about Acumatica is it used to be very much, I'm getting a PDF with 500 new features. It doesn't help me. What they do now is interactive sessions or videos where when I click on my new feature, I can actually see that feature, what it's doing. So it gives me my high level. These are the nice to haves, not the nice to haves. These are the nice features that customers have been asking for, partners have been asking for, and they expose that. So I'll resend that out to the base as well, just so that you can go and relook at it and start to plan. If you're not on 26R1 already, start planning that horizon. Okay, I'm going to end it there. I just want to close I've just got a poll, if those still remaining that I haven't bored to death, if you wouldn't mind just filling out. And then you're welcome to, like I said, this is quite a lot to take in. I'm just going to stop sharing here. It's quite a lot to take in. There's a lot of strategy around this. There's a lot of, cost to think about, especially if you've already got some of these AI tools, how can we incorporate that, or what do I do? And then secondly is if I'm not on these tiers, how do I move on to these tiers? How do I benefit from the AI? I would definitely say, do it sooner rather than later. They definitely, I can see the rapid movement from Acumatica. They're continually changing this. They're continually improving on it. So you want to be ahead of the curve, with the AI automation from within Acumatica. I'm just going to open the poll. Okay. Yeah. So we've done a few sessions like this before. I think we want to. This one's obviously targeted across the base. What we're going to start doing is having sessions very much that's specific to certain verticals. So maybe the Shopify connector as an example in the retail space. Rather that it's focused, and when we send out the invites, we'll also focus it, but then at least exactly, for the industry that this feature would be applicable. 2026 R1 is going to be a general session. It's one of the poll questions. I've just asked, is that something you'd see? And then what we're also going to start doing is customer focus groups. So, this might seem very technical, but I think there's a technicality component of it, but then there's also, as a department, how do I utilize AI? And we'll set up focus groups for that across customers. So, I think besides us just giving information, it's always good where customers give feedback and you talk amongst yourselves as well. It gives that opportunity to say, well, where can we improve, or what can we do? Obviously not to share your IP and certain things. We understand there's certain things around in that, but it'll be optional. So whether you want to do it or not is always optional. So I'd highly recommend joining some of those customer focus groups as well. And that feedback is important because we're also giving that feedback to Acumatica. So the more we do it, the more exposure we get, the more information we get back from our base, the heightened the roadmap potential can be then. In other words, the quicker that they release some of these features and functions. Okay. Thanks very much for attending. I know time is valuable. I think this is a nice way to show you how you can save on time in the future. So, yeah, really appreciate everybody's time. Please reach out to myself or any of the other team members if you'd like to set up a schedule around this. And if you've already started working on it, great. Let us know, and we can help you on that journey. Cal, I think I'm giving everybody 3 minutes back. I think it is, yes. Appreciate the time and thanks very much. And yeah, have a good day further.